When do you anticipate the next budget will be delivered then, if you're elected?
Well, if we're elected, I mean, that's a matter for the Prime Minister in settling the sitting calendar. But, you know, we have set down a budget for the next financial year. We are required to do a MyEFO towards the end of this year.
When do you think Australia could see a budget surplus again?
Well, I mean, that's dependent on a lot of decisions being taken in the future. I mean, you know, the budget's under enormous stress, and that's why I think you have to look at ways to invest in the budget, but also find savings at the same time. And I think people expect that. You know, they expect the government to manage the budget responsibly, but also be able to find room and invest in the things and services they need, like Medicare, for example.
Savings means cuts, doesn't it?
Well, savings means efficiencies. I mean, we've found $95 billion in savings through the budgets that we've handed down, and I think, again, Australian taxpayers expect us to continue that approach. And so, I mean, there's a whole range of things in there. There's, you know, I guess reprioritising, saying, you know, we don't need to do that anymore, but we want to invest in this. There's also looking at ways you drive efficiencies, particularly across the public service, where I think there is still room to find additional savings.
Things like efficiency dividends?
Well, there's an efficiency dividend essentially built into the budget already, and we have each year been finding additional savings on top of that. From
Is that 1%?
Yeah, that's right. And then we've found additional savings with the reducing consultants and contractors. And I think there's continued room in that space. We still spend a lot on external contracts, and we've built the public service really to the size that I think it needs to be. And now you need to ensure that we are finding efficiencies as we go forward.
Well, see, we're talking about efficiencies. You've been pretty ruthless in attacking Peter Dutton over cuts, but you have to make cuts if you're re-elected, surely, with those budget numbers. You wouldn't rule them out, would you? Well,
you'll see our costings and they'll be there. I mean, the majority of our spending has, all of the costings will be outlined about our approach, and you'll see that, you know, the decisions we took in budget and through PFO really are the majority of the spending that we've done through this campaign. Where we've done some additional spending, you'll see the ways that we are going to pay for that. But
how are you going to pay for it?
Well, I've been saying for some time, I mean, and indeed, look at my record as Finance Minister, we have found savings through every budget, and we'll continue that approach. We think there are ways without sacking. I mean, Peter Dutton's cuts are about how he pays for his nuclear energy policy, and also his wanting to sack 41,000 public servants. We've taken a different approach. One, we don't think the state should fund nuclear reactors. We think there's better use for taxpayers' dollars than that. And we think you should resource the public service properly. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be continuing to look for ways to reduce spending across the budget.
And you might do redundancies or natural attrition, mightn't you?
I think the public service is around it's the appropriate size now. We've built it up. Now, there will be ons and offs across departments as programs come to an end, but I think the public service itself is well resourced. There'll be movement across agencies, but really the savings across the public service really can happen in a number of ways. They don't have to be sacking, or shouldn't be sacking, 41,000 public servants in Canberra, if you believe the coalition one day, or across the country if you believe them another.
Let me ask though, how did we get to a situation where in 3 years in office, we've got 41,000 extra public servants? That's a lot of extra public servants.
So a couple of things there. We converted about 12,000 of those from labour hire, so they were already working in the public service, they just weren't working as public servants, and they cost a lot more because you're paying essentially a labour hire company for that labour. So we've converted about, I think it's around 12,000 now. The rest has been going into frontline service delivery agencies. So Veterans Affairs was a basket case when we came to government. Home Affairs, again, a basket case when we came to government. Department of Agriculture was going broke when we came to government. Services Australia wasn't able to deliver the work that they need to do. The NDIA wasn't able to meet people who use that scheme properly. And defence in submarines, creating the submarine agency. These are all areas where we've either grown in our responsibility or we want to give a better service to people. We don't want them to wait for their pension and their Medicare rebate. We want them to be able to pick the phone up and speak to somebody.
If you're re-elected, there's no way as Finance Minister that you're going to be happy with $179 billion plus worth of deficits over 5 years, are you?
Well,
you're going to want to reduce those.
Well, you'll see from my record as Finance Minister and Jim's as Treasurer, where we have found $95 billion of savings.
That's the same as the scare campaign. That has some similarities, at least, with the scare campaign you're running against Dutton. You'll have to make cuts. You'll just have to, won't you? If you're being a responsible economic manager.
Well, I mean, part of our agenda is growing the economy and having that assist the budget. But there are ways that you go through and make sensible savings where you can. And we've made $95 billion. The last budget before the last election, zero savings from the former government. We've done the hard work and we'll continue to do it. And part of my job as Finance Minister is to make sure that where we can generate efficiencies, we are doing so.
Are you planning to grow the public service even more if you're elected?
I think I've been saying for some time, I think it's the appropriate size now. We've gone through all of the frontline agencies, we've worked out what the appropriate resourcing is, and we've provided that resourcing at the same time we're reducing labour hire.
All right, let me ask about the NDIS. Now, there's so many people on it now that basically it's a lot of votes, let's face it, and that's why neither side of politics wants to tackle it, in my view, in the way that they could. Bill Shorten made some progress in trying to reduce the growth of the scheme in partnership with the opposition. If re-elected, would you seek again in a bipartisan manner to try to rein in the scheme?
Well, I think the reforms are largely done in trying to get it down. So we've gone from a growth in the scheme of around 22%. It's heading down towards, I think, 12 to 10, and we've set a target of 8%. So I feel like the reforms that Bill was able to shepherd in cooperation with the coalition have got us in a good place. The real opportunity that comes now, I think, is in foundational supports, in building the service system outside the NDIS, because at the moment there's very little, if you need extra support, that exists outside the scheme.
Are the states going to play ball on that?
Well, I think so. Because it's in their interest too, and the Commonwealth's at the table, and you know, it's something that I've had a keen interest in. I've worked in the disability sector before politics, so I understand the need to provide supports. But when I was knocking around that sector, you used to have therapy centres and early intervention centres and things that you could tap in and out of to use. Those don't exist anymore because everything's been sucked into the scheme.
Why don't you change some of the eligibility?
Well, I think, you know, it's done on an individual assessment. You know, not everybody who applies to the NDIS gets into the NDIS, so I'm not sure that that is the problem. It's having other options for people and making sure we're cracking down on some of the areas where the growth in the NDIS was out of control. Because
why does it grow larger than inflation, even on your target? Why does it grow by 8%?
Well, I think it's the numbers coming into the scheme. It's also the cost of the plans, essentially, and the cost of care, of providing that care. And again, I think we need more options. I was at a community gym the other day where they're providing memberships for people where it's $22 a week to go and use, essentially rehab and keep yourself fit. They were saying if the NDIS was provided here, it's $190 an hour. So there are options where we can look at ways to make sure the offerings outside the scheme help people so they don't come onto the scheme.
Can I get a reaction now to the announcement by the opposition they want to lift defence spending to 2.5% of GDP and eventually 3%?
Well, I think it was sort of the same as they're approaching government. There's a media release, but not much that sits underneath it. We've done the heavy lifting in defence. Richard Marles has done it. I mean, when we came to government, there was $42 billion worth of media releases with no money that sat underneath it. It's very easy to issue a media release, much harder to do the hard work to align your resourcing to your budget. And that's what Richard and the government's been able to do.
They say you made $80 billion worth of cuts. What do you say to that?
It's not correct.
How much have you made in terms of cuts?
Well, we've actually increased spending, $10.7 billion over the forward estimates and $57 billion over the medium term, because that aligns with the Defence Strategic Review and the advice the government got when we came to government. So there's been reprioritising within the defence budget to make sure we can actually get the capability we need, which again was a problem when we came to government. And then we've put extra in to make sure that Defence is able to do what it needs to do based on their advice to us.
Let me read you what Paul Dibb, the author of the Defence White Paper in the 1980s, told the Nine newspapers yesterday concerning Australia's defence capability. He said, when I wrote that white paper in 1987, Australia had 6 battalions. How many do we have now? 6. We had 6 submarines. How many do we have now? 6. We had 1 to 12 surface combatants. How many do we have now? A bit less than that. We had about 100 fighter jets. How many do we have now? About 100. Is this really good enough when China and Russia pose such a potential threat to our country?
Well, again, I think that's the work that Richard's has done this term, Richard Marles. He's come in, we didn't have the capability that we needed from the former government. And we have aligned resources and the review with what we need. And the nature of warfare is changing, the nature of defence, industry is changing, what you need to prepare to protect your country, the equipment is changing. And part of the work that we've done over the last 3 years is make sure that we've got that lined up, in place and resourced in order to deliver it.
In an ideal world, would you like to spend more on defence?
Well, I think we're always open to advice from our agencies about what's needed. I mean, I sit on the NSC, so I see when they come and they argue for additional resources, we've been able to find it because we take the advice of our agencies seriously.
This nuclear $600 billion figure you've been running in your ads, it was an estimate by a renewables lobby group who found it could cost $116 billion, up to $600 billion, never mind their conflict on top. Do you concede that's a potential exaggeration?
I don't. I think that's the Smart Energy Council has used a number of different data sets in order to reach that number. But also, if you look at examples around the world, and there's one in the UK at the moment that's being built, 14 years late, one nuclear reactor is blown out to $90 billion. And that's where you've got a nuclear industry operating in that country. Now, Peter Dutton wants to start a nuclear industry from scratch somehow. No private sector will come near it, so the budget's going to fund it. And he wants to build 7 of them. I mean, 7.
I understand that. But renewables and your transmission lines aren't cheap, are they?
Well, there's costings around that, for sure, but it's nowhere near building 7 nuclear reactors at 90. Well, the difference with us is we are supporting, say, Rewiring the Nation, which I noticed the Coalition are going to abolish in their media this morning. We're funding that infrastructure, but the private sector is funding and investing in the renewable energy system. What we have with nuclear is no private sector is going to come near it, so it will be budget funded.
Sometimes with government subsidies or underwriting, I have to say. Finally, look, we're out of time. There seems an expectation from the polls you're in the box seat to win. Do you believe you can achieve a majority result, and what will it mean if you do?
Well, we've been campaigning from the beginning for a majority government. The PM's been clear about that, but we take nothing for granted. He's been saying we climb a hill and we're, walking up that hill right now. We're all feeling it kind of with 6 days to go, but we take nothing for granted. The election will be close. It'll be close in a number of seats. We think we have a much stronger argument about the plan we want for the future, about investing in Medicare and investing in housing and investing in renewable energies, and the Coalition will cut. And when they cut, everyone will pay.
Katy Gallagher, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.